Welcome back to On Second Thought, where we revisit some hands from Poker Out Loud. I am Chris Konvalinka, Solve For Why disciple and interim host for this podcast, here with Matthew Berkey. Can I call you Matthew?
It's a little weird.
I'm going to call you Matthew, I think. It's gonna.
Off camera, you were calling me a little bitch.
Yeah. I did that to psych myself up. It's working.
Okay, perfect.
So anyway, I will be filling in for Chin. Is he dead, do you think?
It's possible. I've go back to Vlogcast 32. There are a lot of theories out there. I hashed them out.
No, I remember your theories. I think it's equally as likely that he is just lying in bed while his mom strokes his hair and tells him he's going to play 50-100 the next day. We may never know.
I got to tell you. I know I laughed really hard at that. Part of me is jealous.
Yeah.
Part of me wishes that I could lay in bed. It doesn't sound that bad. Yeah.
Sounds warm.
Yeah. Right. He always says, man, that's white people. We're cold as fuck. I think he's right.
Yeah. But we have a couple hands to get into.
Well, one hand. So yeah, this is a student edition. We're only going to do one hand. You were involved.
I am involved.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your first experience here with Poker Out Loud?
I think I took well to the format. I've had to explain myself pretty extensively for Chin one-on-one in private coaching and at the academies and in front of people before. So I think generally it came pretty naturally.
Yeah. To me. I watched the episode. I was really happy with the way it came out. I think the production just like somehow.
The editing is incredible.
It really gets better like every time. Yeah, it honestly
it blew me away.
It really is shocking. And I think like that's something that, you know, if you read the YouTube comments, I think maybe that gets a little lost on the audience, that this is as much of an entertainment product as it is an insightful one. And, you know, I hope that kind of gets across. There's a lot of keyboard warriors out there that are like,
oh my God, no matter how high quality of a product we put out, there are always going to be people that say,
right,
you can't say robust, just say it's a fold.
right, yeah. Or like, you know, the 7 high checks down versus 9 high. And it's just like, they're so unforgiving that incredible. God forbid a table full of 2-5 guys would ever make a mistake.
Yeah, I know.
You know, so I really do, you know, I kind of want to put that out there in this pod and kind of like just discuss the lens through which we developed Poker Out Loud to begin with. You know, my concept behind this was never to somehow have 6 players sit down that were going to divulge the entirety of their strategy through the course of 70 hands.
Right.
And, you know, just have you replicate it as a viewer. The way I always saw this playing out and the way that I think we've produced it is that, you know, there's a big difference between vacuum analysis, which is what we're doing with solver work, and real world variable versatile strategy execution. And it's not a one-to-one exchange. You know, this spot that you study on a solve, the parameters are fixed, the variables are fixed, nothing's going to change, and the outputs are going to be very rigid. You either apply them at that proper mix or you don't. And if you don't, you fail. But in real world, we have way more information to collect. There's game flow. There are, you know, we're constantly changing our strategy. There's this necessary.
Just in episode 1 alone, we get to see me and Fausto interact.
Right.
Like a very unique live variable that is never accounted for in any kind of strategy conversation until now.
Right, of course. And on top of that, like we see a lot of blind versus blind play. And in live poker, that just doesn't happen all that often. So suddenly,
do you chop?
No, but I think
would you chop?
No, God no. There's no rake. The only reason
I'm not saying would you chop in Poker Out Loud. I'm saying
I wouldn't chop.
You don't.
I would chop in a very high rake game.
Yeah,
but that would be
L.A. You chop.
Yeah, or anywhere with. Well, I guess if they take
a $7 drop,
but they take one before the flop, I think.
Yes, yeah. If you chop in LA,
they still take
$1. Rake $1.
Yeah, so I think that kind of forces you to play.
They're getting rich.
Yeah, right.
They're getting rich out there.
But yeah, so it's like in a regular live environment, generally the cutoff for the button is going to be a little bit wider, and they're going to find an open, and you're just not going to see a lot of blind versus blind play. So most of these guys are conditioned through their in position ranges, not in a heads up blind versus blind, you know, 50% range versus whatever. And you see a little passivity there. They're a little uncalibrated. That's good. The viewers should take away from that because they're making those mistakes, you know?
Are you referring to the 8 high showing down?
Yeah.
Yeah. Passivity. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I just think that like the real takeaway from this is to see how an environment organically evolves through the course of, in one episode, you're going to see 6 hands. Over the course of a season, you're going to see about 60 hands. So
how many episodes do we have?
I believe
10.
I think it's somewhere between 7 and 10. I'm not positive, but yeah, this is going to be an ongoing thing.
Should we get into a hand here?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I open 7s under the gun, 6-handed to 35. So I think I'm going to be pretty handicapped throughout this session, merely given that I have Berkey on my direct left. So I think I'm going to be pretty careful with my opens.
35.
Against Chris's open under the gun, I think a lot of the fact that kind of the same reasons I have, I'm a little bit handcuffed here, I think from a chin in the small blind and Fausto on the button. I think Chris is probably feeling a lot of the same pressure from Matt on my right. I don't think he's going to be opening super light in this spot. I have a decent holding for a good candidate for a 3-bet in this spot. I'm going to opt to 3-bet, but I'm going to 3-bet sizing just I'm not going to go super huge. I'm not going to pull out. So I'm going to probably do like a 2.5, hoping to jump into this heads up and in position.
Price decides to 3-bet ace-10 offsuit in the cutoff to 90. I, in general, just don't 3-bet this hand class almost ever, unless I'm facing a super wide range, just because I'd like to retain all their offsuit Broadway and like make dominating pairs post-flop.
Sure.
What do you think?
I think it's fair. You're also mostly playing 9-max.
Yeah,
so I mean, this is kind of a low jack open in your game,
like MP. Yeah, low jack. Yeah,
it's a low jack open, and
sure,
and he was cut.
Yeah.
I think it's a reasonable formation to 3-bet.
Yeah, but like when you 3-bet, you shed a lot of the hands that you dominate, which is just why I tend not to like 3-bet this.
I don't think that's true. I don't think any offsuit ace deuce through ace 9 is opening, and I think most suited aces are probably calling.
I mean, like queen 10. King 10.
Some,
Jack 10,
some.
King Jack.
Well, you don't dominate King Jack, but yeah.
I just mean like with the ace 10, ace Jack hand class.
You definitely dominate some hands that fold, but not all. The suited varieties are probably going to call, and the suited varieties of the ace X is probably going to call at a fair frequency.
Right.
I think really, it's splitting hairs whether or not this hand should flat or 3-bet or even mix in a fold sometimes.
I think it can just fold.
I think it's okay.
I'm tighter than you, but I think it can just fold.
I think it's okay, but I really think we need to be clear that like under the gun 6-handed is not the same as under the gun.
Yeah, I mean we could just say low jack.
Right, that's what I mean. Against a low jack range, I think that like ace 10's, yeah, it's probably pretty neutral. I could probably do all 3 things.
What do you think about the size?
The sizing is my issue.
I think he's hedging.
Agreed. I think that's the big issue that I have here.
Right.
I think ace 10 fits nicely into a polarized 3-betting range.
Like 120.
Yeah. I think that this hand is really nice to, if you want to call it, whether you want to call it having it at the bottom of your range or as a bluff or whatever the case may be.
Right.
I think this hand fits very well. And, because it fits there pretty well, then yeah, it's probably like the difference between a large 3-bet and a fold. And that's fine. But he didn't do that. He went with the linear size.
90. Fausto is on the button and chooses to cold call the 9-10 of clubs.
Let's hear what he has to say first before we pick him apart.
So I was anticipating what I would do if he decided to 3-bet. Largely with player pool, somebody opening under the gun with a combination of 3-betting tends to be on the tighter side, which will lead me to fold, which I kind of want to do now also. But given his sizing, we'll have a deep enough SPR if I do decide to call, and give me some wiggle room and playability going forward. By me calling here, this could also try to discourage him from 3-betting too much, which will lead into another dynamic. My hesitation comes from not knowing if he's 3-betting merge or not, but given what I know about the player, I anticipate that he could be 3-betting merge, perhaps. So just gonna go ahead and call and see what happens, and I'm just gonna largely react to the equity that's provided to me going forward.
I think this is a pretty aggressive cold call. I mean, I recognize that it
What cold call isn't though?
aces.
No, I don't mean
Ace, king,
I don't mean
kings.
hand. I mean,
what isn't aggressive? I mean, by aggressive, I mean too wide. I'm just being gentle.
okay, fine, but like if you're gonna say that like it's okay to cold call aces
Chin
and
top,
kings,
He's like, and well, he's like, when you're commentating, don't say too wide, say aggressive,
sure.
and then you preserve like.
I think that there's a time and a place for it. But my point is that if we consider 10-9 suited too wide,
yeah,
what wouldn't you consider to be too wide? Queen 10 suited?
I mean, I'm just gonna 4-bet a lot.
Okay, fine, but that's one strategy to have.
Like, do you think he's also cold calling? Like, is this protected?
I think it should be.
So he's also cold calling like.
I mean,
Queen.
he said that he expects you to 4-bet at a reasonable frequency.
So he's just folding out like all the equity that he cold calls, or does he also?
No, I'm just saying he probably just doesn't have a big 4-bet range, if one at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's okay.
The natural choice here should be for him to 4-bet or fold. Because Chris chose 90, I think he can 4-bet this hand at a fair frequency. It fits into a 4-bet range at this depth, particularly whenever Chris is choosing a linear size. And I think it functions very well at a low 4-bet frequency, maybe 25% of the time.
So what would your 4-bet construction be then, if it's including 10-9 suited?
It would be like premium, so like 10s plus.
Sure.
Ace Jack suited plus probably.
It's a lot of hands.
No, it's not.
Yeah, if 9-10's in there, then you have like all suited Broadway.
No. I can choose 9-10 and not choose King Jack
10?
or King 10 or Queen 10.
I think those are a lot better. You should use. You don't want to use those instead?
I would prefer to use those if I were out of position.
Why is that?
Because blocking is a lot more critical to me there.
All right.
When I'm in position, I'm probably going to face a scenario where we're going post flop a little bit more frequently.
Yeah.
But that's also a good reason why he can, or why he's choosing to cold call, I guess, because he wants to realize his equity.
Sure. I mean, it's gonna be tough,
bro. Ike 4-bets 9-10 suited.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe that it could be good.
I'm just saying, Ike 4-bet me with 9-10 suited, so it's obviously part of the range.
I bet they were deeper than 300 big blinds.
No.
No.
It was on Poker After Dark. I'm being a little bit facetious. We were deep enough. I 5-bet him with the King 5.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think it's going to be hard to realize his equity 3 ways in a 3-bet pot.
So I don't, because of what happened.
10 SPR.
I don't because of what happened. And so this is the argument I'm trying to make for cold calling over 4-betting. 4-betting is a part of strategy construction that is at least studied to a point where all actors involved have a response.
Correct.
Right? Cold calling is presenting a multi-way dynamic now through another decision. So he is inserting himself in sort of a disruptive way that now lends itself to no pre-programmed response. So you're now facing a multi-actor scenario, and you don't have a constructed 4-bet range versus multiple actors from an open, because it just doesn't ever happen. You're just not going to face a 3-bet cold call, right?
Correct.
And likewise, every time you continue, Chris is now in a scenario where he doesn't have pre-constructed decisions for a multi-way scenario where he 3-bet.
I'm closing the action, right? Oh, you mean post-flop?
Well, no, I am talking about pre. You're right. I'm sorry. I forgot that, like, if you call it, it closes action.
Right.
And if you 5-bet, like Chris's decision's obviously.
I mean,
pretty
I don't
black
think
and
it'd be that. I don't think it's that hard for me to construct a 4-bet versus a Fausto.
Find me your bluffs.
King 10, King Jack.
Why?
Because that's how I do it.
But why?
I mean,
that's how you do it versus a 3-bet.
Yeah. Like, why can't...
And why King 10, why King 10, King Jack? Just because they're lowest equity King highs?
No, because they double block the top and they unblock like the suited wheels that Fausto always uses. I think that makes sense.
I think this becomes a very negative event whenever you are facing a cold caller, because his most likely top of range cold calls are going to be jacks and 10s.
King, Queen offsuit. King, Queen suited just being too good.
Oh, you're saying for you to choose a 4-bet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can agree that I think like starting to choose like Ace Queen and King Queen become a lot better options.
24.
Yeah.
Ace Queen and King Queen offsuit.
But those are pretty good fucking hands.
Yeah. How about that?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
We can do that.
But that's what I'm getting at is now we arrive at a point where everybody's so unstudied that we're now back to kind of just surviving on our laurels, and it generally results in the value lens. So you're just going to act according to your hand, right? He pushes everybody back to hand versus range analysis, where suddenly like you're simply responding in accordance to your hand. And then, should you take aggressive action, Chris is responding in accordance to his hand, et cetera, et cetera. So what ultimately ends up happening is it goes 3-way a lot and then checks to Fausto a lot.
I did not anticipate that happening ever.
Chris, so Fausto disrupted. And we'll get to this whenever we get to post flop, but Chris clammed up. He was at the bottom and he went into a scenario that like was never expected.
Yeah. So we can go to the flop.
Yeah, you obviously have a very clear call with 7s, no brainer. And we see a flop of
King 4 deuce rainbow.
Okay.
So gonna check here.
I am definitely checking here. We went to this 3-handed. I'm sitting in a kind of a weird spot between these two guys. I definitely have, I think, one of the weaker holdings that I would show up here with. I am checking.
Chris decides to check.
Right.
And in the moment, I'm thinking his checks are his give-ups, which should be few and far between, attacking my low jack open.
Right.
And then his showdown hands.
Yeah, I think
or traps, whatever.
Yeah, right. I think his checks are like largely suited connectors that just can't bet. Right. So like hands like what Fausto has.
Right.
Which specifically block like the worst hands Fausto be cold calling, like 9s and 10s.
The inverse too. So when Fausto has fucking 9-10, right, he blocks his give ups.
Right. Yeah.
Waits him towards showdown.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking in the hand.
Yeah. So I think like when he checks, it should be like kings.
Yeah. Yes.
And then
Queens.
like 6-7 suited, 7-8 suited. Queens is fine check.
Jacks.
Yeah.
Even like an ace queen that can just check call.
Yeah. Probably be pretty prone to bet hands that wrap around the king. Like when he has ace queen, Fausto just like doesn't ever have a king.
Yeah.
Or very rarely anyway. And it's going to allow him a pretty nice path to double barrel, because what he should expect is he bets flop, Fausto calls at a fair frequency with like jacks or worse, and then turns a brick and he just gets to pull.
And I also expect him to just be betting like his queen jack with a backdoor, ace jack with a backdoor, ace 10. All the suited Broadway hands that have backdoor equity.
It's hard. It's hard because he's against 2 ranges on a dry board. So
but it's like he flops advantage.
But he doesn't get that. That's the thing. In a multi-way pot, advantage just means that like he has more equity than each of you individually, but not each of you collectively.
That would incentivize a bet, though.
Sort of. Not necessarily.
I mean, he can leverage position. Like, when he bets, Fausto has...
Who's more likely to have the strong range here, Fausto or you?
Fausto.
Yeah. Right. Right. Like, once you just call pre...
Let me say that more confidently so we can edit it. Fausto.
Right. Because, like, when you just call pre, you're a lot more capped. Yeah. You're just not going to have kings, ace, king, or aces very often.
Right.
Whereas
Fausto... I was expecting, and in my analysis, I say that Fausto's probably going to be calling uncapped here.
Right. Yeah.
Expecting me to 4-bet maybe too often.
Right. So like now he kind of like is not going to be in a positional situation, and he's pretty leveraged once he does start to make a bet. His pot's getting out of hand. He has a pretty shitty hand. He's at stone bottom.
Yeah. So we're past Chris's check. we're on to Fausto now.
I was wrapping up Chris's check basically,
okay.
but for what it's worth, I do think it's a bet because I don't think he has better bluffs.
Right.
So like you're saying, like he should be betting like Queen Jack suited and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even consider this hand being in his 3-bet.
Fair.
Which is obviously on me because it was, but
Right. I guess what I'm saying is I would be a little bit more inclined to check the Queen Jack suited. It's a 3-bet pot. Backdoor equity is going to service you far less. I mean, I guess as the aggressor
through the passive tree,
for sure
is way less valuable. But through the
Agreed.
aggressive tree, like how else are you supposed to polarize on static?
Well,
fixtures?
the problem is that it's 2 unders. You'd just much rather have ace jack suited.
Okay, so you have 4 ace 10, 4 ace jack, 4 ace queen because you wanted to bet that, right?
Yeah, and then you have all your king X.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Like giving up with your suited connectors and then like your queen and jack highs. Not such a bad event because Fausto's going to check back more than 0.
Yeah,
and your queen and jack highs are also blocking like what the bottom of his.
I think Fausto should just check back 100.
Oh, I totally disagree. I think he should just like bet 100 when check 2
Why?
because he's never getting trapped.
But he should be. You know,
It's so hard. You just have so little king X, and the king X you do have is king queen.
Not by me.
Right, but it's like the same thing. It's just
price.
like I don't disagree, but like it's still just very hard for him to be trapping because ace king doesn't really want to check, aces doesn't really want to check unless you're just certain of bets.
Yeah, but he has
through.
like king 10 of suit.
Yeah, sure, and those hands will check, but like you know when you say trapped, Fausto's at stone bottom with no equity.
I mean showdown. Where I think it lands is like we land on a static texture. Let's move to the Fausto bet.
Yeah, fun.
So the ranges that I'm anticipating between the two, Chris largely having pocket pairs, his stronger Broadway region, that's all gonna naturally check here. With the 3-better, him checking here might be a reaction because I have position and he's now in a multi-way spot. I do think his range is, again, it's probably going to be Broadway dense, some pocket pairs, some ace-X. I anticipate some defense here, but my hand having some backdoors largely is going to want to deny. And I do have king X coverage myself here, so it's not out of the norm that I could bet and get rid of their nothings also. I'm gonna bet half pot given that we're deep enough in SPR that I'm just gonna bet normal, have natural reactions from their ranges that naturally folds. I don't want to over-invite them with a smaller bet, so I'm just gonna go and bet normal, hopefully shed somebody away and see if I pick up equity on the turn.
So Fausto bets 150 into like 285.
Yeah, I think his sizing is a little too large, but I think his reasoning is...
Really? Wow, we're on totally different pages.
Okay.
I was going to say that he should bet very infrequently, and when he does, really large.
I disagree. I think he gets to bet a lot. He's going to have a lot of hands that want protection, hands like 10s, jacks, queens to some degree.
Why do those want to bet large?
They don't. That's what I'm saying. I disagree. I think he should be betting often and for small.
Oh, right.
And I think his reasoning is good. It just doesn't align with the bet sizing. His reasoning is like he has a low equity hand that has the ability to improve and barrel, but you know, if he basically faces resistance, he's going to easily give up. That doesn't signify going for a catch-all size, right? Especially in a multi-way scenario where it's like you're caged. Even when he bets small, like 7s becomes a difficult defend.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it was an easier decision facing
Agreed.
150 than
Right, I agree.
75 or 90, something like that.
Yeah, what was in the pot? 280?
285, I think.
I like 90. Yeah, I like 90. I like even 100 is just like okay.
I just have a problem with the fact that he blocks Chris's give ups.
Some
and
not all.
Just unblocks his showdown like region. And I guess I was also just waiting the fact that I opened under the gun a little bit too much.
I think so.
I think I just thought Chris would have a tighter range, not ace-10 off.
Yeah, but his sizing indicates that that's not the case.
It's true. I guess I just didn't see through that.
Well, it's because you have sevens and you don't need to see through it in the moment, right? Like, at the end of the day, we're all going to be victimized by playing hand versus range in all of these scenarios. And that's why doing disruptive things like what Fausto's doing presents plus EV scenarios that appear negative EV if you were to examine them in a vacuum scenario, right? At the end of the day, we're playing in an organic environment with fallible human beings who aren't ever going to be able to discern in real time. You don't get to iterate this 100,000 times, 100 million times, right?
Right.
So we're never going to know.
Did we decide that Chris should have bet
I think he should have bet.
flop?
I think
Because it's one of his best bluff candidates.
Well, also it's just prove to me that you are protecting that cold call range, right? Like, get sticky, man.
Yeah.
I think Chris has a natural half pot bet because his range is just I don't know that it's necessarily constructed tighter, but it's constructed a lot more around that king than Fausto's naturally.
Not that it particularly matters because it was just live poker, but if we have ace-10 off as a bluff, so 12 combos of that, right?
Yeah.
We're also betting our ace-10, ace-jack suited. And then we're giving up with our queen and jack highs.
Well,
is that how you want to construct?
I don't want to construct here.
Oh, we don't have
that's what I'm getting at is I'm just betting, I'm already deviating because I faced a cold call from the button. So I'm just looking at this strictly as this is an advantageous board.
Right.
I think he's cold calling capped. I'm just simply going to put in more money against what I perceive to be two capped ranges. And if either one of them want to prove to me that they're doing this with some level of construction or balance, que sera, sera. Yeah. There aren't very many bad things that are going to occur. And the turn equity distribution for ace-10 is very black and white. You know, we're either going to turn an ace or a 10 for showdown value. We're going to turn a queen or a jack where we kind of get to reevaluate and really, if Fausto defends flop, we just really get to examine that of well, how many defends through a cold call range does he truly have?
So are we following through on a queen, jack?
That's what I'm saying. Well, I'm probably not.
Not.
Right. Because it's if I analyze that and say well, how many defends through the cold call pre and then calling on flop for half pot does he really have? It's exactly king X and pocket pairs.
Right.
He's just not going to have floats. So the second we alleviate those floats, now we just hope that the pocket pairs check back at some frequency and we realize. And I think I would do the same thing on a 10. I may be a little bit inclined to depending on sizing, check call with some of those candidates some of the time. But yeah, it's just I would probably check 100 on turn and have very clear check calls with an ace. Very murky check calls on a 10, queen, or jack.
So Fausto arrives at a bet of 150. Back over to me, and we'll see that I eventually arrive at a fold.
Pretty surprised to see a bet out of Fausto here. He should respect that once the 3-better checks, his range is largely showdown driven. So ideally he wouldn't have any bluffs because the initial raiser has a showdown dense check. His linear suited broadways should be pretty naturally continuing of hearts, clubs, and diamonds at least. So I expect Fausto to respect that formation and just have a good hand here. I would be pretty surprised if he had a Jack 10 suited type hand. I think he's weighted more towards top pair queens, that region.
Okay, so Fausto bets out, and I think he knows my 3-bet was merged at best, and I'm anticipating he has a lot of pocket pairs, some top pair hands. I think he probably also is sitting with some probably a lot of different back doors where I'm relatively handcuffed and I have no good possibilities other than I guess straight back doors, but I just can't really see continuing here, so I'm gonna fold.
And then Chris also just check folds.
Yeah.
I think it's obviously fine if Chris contains ace-10 off and is check folding the flop for Fausto to bet 9-10. I just didn't see how he could possibly know that.
Fair. I think if we're zooming out and trying to analyze this from a grand takeaway of this very weird, disruptive spot that isn't going to present very often.
It's a cool spot.
Right. This is what we've lost through the solver age, right? Is we want to be so deep into the vacuum that we want the environment to buckle to our every whim and desire, right?
Right.
We want the environment to be stable. But the fact of the matter is live poker is very unstable, right? So it's like, yeah, it's weird for us to put a product out where we're saying like these are our students, these are our methodologies. It's like we don't really teach cold calling, but I am not going to be the guy who says like you have to color inside the lines. I think at depth against players that you think you have edge on, for sure cold calling is a viable option. Just like limping is a viable option in a lot of like to me, hindering strategic options for the simplicity of being able to come closer to applying a vacuum strategy is just like taking away all the art of no limit hold'em and deep stack depths.
We do teach cold calling.
We discuss it, but it's like
At Elite.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also just like one of those things where it's like you're all better served to not do it.
Yeah.
But also like I do it.
Yeah.
And you're going to see it in your environment for sure. So let's have a conversation about it. Like if we're actually going to be honest with our audience here and say like you'll never see a 3-bet cold called in your environment. It's like that's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
Unless you're only playing online. It's like if you're playing any 1-3 through 5-10 uncapped game, capped or uncapped in America, you are 100. I play 3-6-12 and the amount of cold calling of 3-bets that occurs is so abundantly clear. It's like there's a 10% range when you're over 200 big blinds that will always cold call 3-bets.
Well, I mean, this is nothing new. People have been in deep denial about these things happening for a long time, just for the security of the certainty of the solver in a vacuum.
That's what I'm saying. It's like at some point we have to shift the narrative and recognize that vacuum analysis doesn't translate in a one-to-one exchange into a variable environment.
Yeah, but people don't want complexity and creativity. They
understand.
Want like simplicity and certainty.
Totally fine. And let's start there. That's great. But here we are.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the problem set in front of us. You can criticize Fausto all you fucking want.
Well,
but he made a negative EV play. Well, I'm just saying, I'm not saying you personally. I'm just saying like the audience. Like criticize him all you want.
It worked.
He took a negative EV pre-flop decision or a neutral one. We don't even know. Honestly, it's like, you know, it's whatever. It is what it is. He did something pre.
Yeah.
Protected or not, that wasn't able to be exploited by the other two opponents. And thus it led to a plus EV result. And yes, that is an anecdotal experience that happened one time. But I think that there's a way to scale this type of strategy. I do think that there's a way to not have a 4-bet rate. We you know where we see it all the time is when we're differentiating between 4-bets and 5-bets or 5-bets and 6-bets. At some point, there's a cap on how many bets will go in pre-flop before just cold calls start coming through, right? Same thing post-flop. If like a guy checks a set and it goes bet raise, it's just like, hey, you're not supposed to be cold calling anything when it goes bet raise.
Well, oftentimes the cold call looks and the range is the same as another bet.
Right.
So,
right. And you don't have fold equity with the cold call. So it's like we have a chance to earn more this way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a cool spot. I hope everybody has an open mind. And that's going to be a running theme with this show.
Yeah. So my apologies to Fausto. I am a supporter of creativity. But I was pissed that I lost the hand.
Understandably so. I get it.
Because I said on camera that he would have no bluffs and he had 9-10 suited.
Yeah.
So
you actually said like one pip up. You were like, I just don't think he's ever going to have like Jack 10 suited.
Yeah, here. I know. Oh, I know.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of this game. I really do think if we distill it down to the fact that in live poker, time is the great metric that we're operating off of, and it's not hands dealt. The second that you remove volume, a lot of shit can go down because everything's so anecdotal. Nobody has any data on you. It's like playing anonymously over a short sample size. And because of that, like you factor in depth and you factor in some bravery and some creativity. And, you know, a lot of stuff can just occur on nodes that like really haven't been examined.
That will wrap it up, I think, for episode 1 of On Second Thought, Student Season Edition.
Yep. It's a wrap.